back to part 2 of Autism Awareness Australia's Autism Safety Series. My name's Nicole, and today I'm joined by 3 incredible autism parents and advocates, Catherine, Brianna, and Vanessa. And we're going to talk about autism safety, but this time we're talking about autism safety in unfamiliar environments. So thank you once again for joining me, ladies. If you haven't watched part 1 of the series, you can go to the description box below and watch it now. And you can also find links to nationwide support services, including the Carer Gateway and Lifeline, if our discussion today raises any concerns for you. So autism families are constantly navigating places and spaces that are unfamiliar for us, whether that be on public transport, in the shopping centre, holiday destinations, and also healthcare settings like doctors' surgeries, hospitals and the like. And with this unfamiliarity comes different challenges related to safety for our children. So let's start off by sharing some practical knowledge and advice for those autism families that are watching. Kat, I'm going to start with you. And I know recently you went on a holiday. How do you prepare for potential safety incidences when you visit an unfamiliar place like a resort or a hotel?
Research, communication with all of the key stakeholders, and don't be afraid that if there is an incident, because there might be, that you're not in control of still having a really wonderful time with your family. So you're right, we recently went on a little staycation, and so the first thing that I do is I ask for the floor plan of the hotel room that I'm staying at. I want to know how many balconies there are. I want to know entry and exit points. And given that it's a hotel, because of fire and safety hazards, you can't lock the door from the inside. So what I did is I spoke to the mechanics department, the engineering department of the hotel, and spoke to them about what safety protocols I could utilize to keep my children from trying to get down to the hotel pool, which is where they want to be. So it's really all about doing that homework. I do not step a foot outside of my safe zone, which is my home, without doing, honestly, just due diligence on every situation. If it's a dentist office, if it's a hospital, if we're going to the beach, if we're trying to attempt going to have a meal in a cafe, my children have visual aids. We show photographs, aeroplanes, we're going to do this, we're going on a train. They get YouTube videos of what it looks like. We get visuals of what it looks like. We use Proloquo to show them what's going to be involved. We might even look at what they're going to wear. And we try and prep them first as much as possible. We have... in my situation, if we're going out in any public setting, I require a minimum of 5 adults to supervise the 3 children. My children don't have any understanding of danger, stranger danger, and they are fearless. So when you start combining all of those things together, there are too many variables. So I have to make it as controlled as humanly possible. So every key stakeholder understands who my children are, what their behavior triggers are, what is going to make that behavior escalate, and if it does, how do we de-escalate them? What are those things that are going to help them? For my kids, it's pretty quick and easy. Give them an iPad, let Peppa Pig get on there, or the Wiggles, and that will help them to de-escalate quite quickly. And it's important that you know before you step outside your safe zone what those triggers are and how you can de-escalate them, and who in your support network can help you de-escalate that particular situation. So there's lots to unwrap in this one, but honestly, the biggest takeaway is research, make the phone calls, don't be afraid to call the place 4-5 times. Ask them if they can give you access prior to your appointment, so you can do a walkthrough. Sometimes these days they do visual walkthroughs. So if you've got a medical appointment or something like that, you can do that prior. I do work with police officers, so that is my profession. I do work with first responders. One of the really great things to do, if you can, is set up a local appointment with your local police station and go and get them familiarized as well with the people who are there to support them if they are in times of duress and in times of stress or anxiety, because they want to be familiar with the uniforms, with the shiny buckles, with the smells of a hospital or a medical associated place, because that can be sensory. They can be very cold environments, and the sterilization of things. So it really is about being prepared from our side and knowing who your children are and what those triggers are going to be.
So much sound advice and practical tips there. I know when we saw your preparation for your recent holiday, it gave me so many tips that I didn't think of. So thank you for sharing all that. Vanessa, what's some of your advice for parents and carers when a safety concern develops in an unfamiliar area? And I know that you've had some experience in hospitals that you might like to share.
Yeah, we've had a lot of experiences in hospitals. Well, look, I think you've got to be a voice. I like to trust my gut. I've always trusted that instinct. I think a mother's instinct is very important, and to trust your gut, and particularly having Adrian being nonverbal, is to have a voice for him. Because you can go into a hospital situation and it concerns me, particularly for those from a cold background or who are vulnerable themselves. They don't have the strength to speak up. And we do need to listen. We do need to listen and listen to what the doctors say. Do we always have to agree with what the doctors say? No. My son was in hospital 2021 to 2020, so November 2021, just after his birthday, till February 2022, we were in hospital for over 3 months. Prior to that, he was having, I know it now, and I was right, psychosis because of his medication. We were in hospital. I went into the hospital and said, he's going to have an outburst. It's coming. I can see it. It's like you both have said earlier, Kat and Bree and Nick, yourself, knowing your child, going into the hospital. I know my son has been having these episodes. It's gone from every 4 days to 3 days to 2 days to 1 day. It's been happening since the beginning of March. We're now in November. I'm telling you, you're going to have to give him something soon, because he's going to go crazy and he's going to rip up your hospital. No, he's fine. He looks fine. I go, you're seeing Down syndrome? So this is with a dual diagnosis, you know what I mean? You're seeing Down syndrome. I'm telling you, this is not his normal Down syndrome face. This is, I'm in a trance and I'm about to go nuts. He did rip up that hospital because no one listened, to the point that they then had to get 5 security guards to hold him down. Traumatic for my son, traumatic for me. We had our support worker with us as well. He tipped the hospital bed. We had a lady with a baby. I went to her and said, hey, look, you better just close your curtain. I was worried about her as well. They didn't want to admit my son because they were blaming it on COVID. His behaviours are because of COVID. So I fought in a very nice, respectful way the doctor who didn't want to admit my son, and said, well, you've got 5 security guards holding my son down, and you're telling me that it's safe for us to go home. So I'm not leaving. You can kick me out, but then you're going to get in a lot of trouble. So I think it's really important, again, trusting our doctors, because you get some fantastic doctors, but then you get those who think they put our children in a box. And particularly when it's a dual diagnosis, that's what they like to do. They kind of pick one diagnosis and not the other when it's that interaction. So I think there's a lot of learnings in the hospital system that need to happen, particularly when you have a child with a disability. My son was in a geriatric ward. He was in a geriatric ward, and the room next to us was end of life. So you would get people coming into that room saying goodbye to their loved ones, obviously, screaming and crying when their loved one passed on. My son's there with psychosis, coming off medication, security guard at the door. When he'd go off, like I said, they'd press a button, 5 security guards would come running in. And I had said to them, this is a trigger. This is a trigger. When he hears that screaming and the banging and the crying, that's why he's broken the cistern on your toilet and smashed it. That's why he's punching holes in the hospital walls. So it's about educating them. I had some nurses which were fantastic. I had others that would be like, well, can't you just calm him down? And that was really hard.
You raise a really, really important point. And there are lots of families out there who have diagnoses themselves. There are lots of families out there who English is not necessarily their first language, and they don't feel confident in that hospital environment to speak up. And if that's one thing that we're really saying, and we're all here and nodding our head in agreement with you, Vanessa, is that we have to be the voice 100%. For our loved ones, because we understand them better than anybody. And if they're not listening, and I'm so sorry you've had that experience. I've had my children in hospital more times than I would care to share. But my experiences have all been very positive, horrific situations, but the staff have been very accommodating, which has been really, really wonderful. They listen. And again, I'm really sorry for that experience, but it is so critical for anybody who's listening today. Please advocate.
Yes.
Please speak up for your loved one, even if you feel a little bit uncomfortable, because you know your loved one better than anybody. And if you're self-advocating and you don't have somebody there, have it prepared. Have it on a notepad, have it in your iPhone, have it there ready to go and show them, because self-advocates obviously have episodes where I have lots of people who work with me who, drive a vehicle, maintain beautiful, loving relationships with partners, drive a car, and then they have something that triggers them and they're alone and people don't understand who they are. So have that prepared for yourself if you are flying solo at the moment too.
And I think also know who you can reach out to. I mean, look, I was very lucky because I have a local MP who's great, and he actually rang up and said, how are you going? Because I'd heard from someone that Adrian had been in hospital, because we connected from previous roles that I've had, but also because he was one of the ones who went looking for my son when he went missing, because everyone knew about it, right? And I said to him, I go, you know me, I'm a strong person. I've always had to be, I left home when I was 16, like lots of stuff has happened, always had to be the strong one. And I can speak up, but I got to a point, there was this one day when I thought, far out, we're never going to get out of this. We're in this dark, dark, deep tunnel. I don't think I can do it anymore. And that's when I thought, spoke to some family members and thankfully had that support, through iPads. That's how we were communicating. But if I can get to a day or a point where I think I can't take it anymore, for someone who's not as strong as me, who's supporting them? Where's the support? We've got counsellors in the hospital. If you've got someone who's been in hospital for 3 months, go and support that person. Be aware that someone with a disability, a parent of a child with a disability, they don't have the opportunity to come and go like everyone else. They're there and they're stuck there. They're changing the nappies. They're showering them. They're feeding them. They're changing the sheets. They're doing everything that they need to do that they would do generally at home for their child. And then you're kind of being left sometimes you're left in no man's land. So I think there's learnings there. I'd love to get in with the hospitals actually and have a chat with them about what we need to do to support people with disabilities, but also being aware that our children, and again, no matter what age they are, you don't put them in a geriatric ward. You make sure that there needs to be, and it's something I will speak to the members of parliament about, but there needs to be a room perhaps in a ward or in a children's ward where there is Winnie the Pooh or whatever it was. I remember when Adrian, like you said, Kat, when your kids are in hospital and they're younger, it's fantastic. Winnie the Pooh's on the wall. They bring in games for your child to play. our child is no different at 20. If the hospital knows that they have a developmental delay, they're no different to when they were 3 or 4. Let them have at least that. Let them have something, so mum and dad and the carer can know that, okay, I've got resources here that if they need a distraction, because often our children need a distraction, that the hospital is going to give me some toys or something, not I'm going to have to try and sneak things in when you're not meant to. So I don't know. I mean, I've had very good hospital experiences. That one was not the best, but I think we do need to be understanding, and those in the system need to be understanding that an adult with a disability, you need to not treat them like an adult that you would who doesn't have a disability.
It's also what you're really touching on here now is carer burnout. So while COVID was a really difficult time for you with Adrian in hospital for such a long period of time, we're still talking about carers burnout. And
it's preparing for our children, like you say, but preparing for us, and as mothers, we know that we always come last, but the plan in place, Kat, like you're saying about our care needs and preventing burnout, but who's going to help us should we get to that point?
And it's still a safety protocol, which is what we're here talking about. You know, it can be very easy sometimes to focus on the loved one, but you've got to pull the lens out and focus on the nucleus and the team that support that loved one too, because there are safety risks for everybody involved. And what Vanessa 100%. Was touching on there was absolutely carers burnout, and that then poses a safety risk to their loved one and to the hospital, and a whole range of different scenarios.
Well, it's that whole thing, like when you get on a plane, because we took Adrian on his first plane trip in December, which was, so I want to actually throw in there too, the sunflower lanyard is amazing. And also, like you were saying, Kat, is preparation. Adrian went to the airport every day, once a week leading up to going to the trip. So he knew how to go through security and the crowds and all that sort of stuff. Okay. But I think that with carers, it's really important, like they say on a plane, put your oxygen mask on first. And that's something we're really focusing on now at Autism Community Network, is we just had a carers retreat with 22 amazing mums. And just to see the level of their energy and their feelings and the emotional toll that when they first got on the bus to when they got off the bus, they like left yesterday and were going back home, it was just like a whole weight was lifted. So we need to care for each other as carers to make sure we're okay, to look after our loved ones as best as we can. That's like a big piece of advice that I would give anyone.
Very sound advice. Brian, I'm going to throw to you. Are there some spaces that you consider completely inaccessible due to safety concerns? And if there is inaccessible places that you just wouldn't take your children, what can be done in those spaces to make them a little bit more accessible for autistic children and their families?
I mean, yes and no, I think is the answer to that thing. Are there inaccessible places? I think most of the world is inaccessible. If you have a child who has, you know, a disability that places them at risk or makes them vulnerable in certain environments that aren't built for them. I've been listening to what, Catherine and Vanessa have been saying, and I just think that the one thing that really stands out to me from what they were saying is, because I've been in all the situations you guys have mentioned, yet 100% could write the book, right? And sadly, there are so many parents who have been there and that book hasn't been written, so maybe that's something for someone to do here. But, for one thing that I've always said, to what I have learned from constantly having to advocate for my child in those unfamiliar environments is people over process. It doesn't matter what the rules are. How is this affecting my person? How is this affecting my child or myself? I need to put myself first over process. So when somebody says, you can't do that because we don't have that in our system, or we're not allowed to go there, or you're not allowed to go there, or he has to go here because that's the space we have, my thought to myself is this one of those situations where the process is more important than the person? Probably not. It never will be in my book. So be prepared to ask for something that's not in the book or not in the rules. You know, my child needs this. How can I help you make this happen? And don't even try to do that thing that you know is not going to work. So for me, in those unfamiliar environments, I always think to myself, especially when someone is trying to tell me to do something that's not going to work for my kid, people over process, you have to stand up and say something. So with regards to sort of your question, Nick, you know, are there places that are just inaccessible? I mean, where do I start? A park without a fence, a beach, roads everywhere, train stations without the you know, town hall station. What? I'm going to have us sitting way back from that little, you know, that those blue dots you're supposed to stand behind are still too close to the platform as far as I'm concerned. So there are a lot of places that are inaccessible just by their very nature. Nature is inaccessible by its very nature. So what can we do to make them more accessible? A lot of the things that my panelists here are already doing, advocating at systemic levels to try and make them more accessible. As the parent, you know, always bear in mind that at the end of the day, we are the ones responsible for making sure our children are safe when we're out with them. So again, being always within arm's reach, he is able to speak a little bit now, but he's mostly non-speaking, and my other son is completely non-speaking. So I don't assume that what's going on in his head is what's going on in my head. So I'm always got him within arm's reach, much like what Catherine was saying, like, you know, research, ring up, ask for things that aren't in the book. You know, I take my safety with me. So, you know, I might have a blanket in my bag and it's a stinking hot day, but it's there because if I'm out in a park and there's a whole bunch of kids screaming and shouting, carrying over there, that's going to trigger my son, he gets under the blanket. There's this, but he can block out the world. That movement isn't happening for him. He gets under the blanket or the sheet. I actually bought a car that is the unsexiest vehicle in the whole world because I needed to have a safe place on wheels, you know, so we will travel places in this massive van, 3 of us in the family, 2 of them kids, but it means that if I all of a sudden have to leave wherever I am so that my son can release that energy, curl up in a ball, scream, shout, you know, whatever else, he can do that in the car and we'll just go straight down there. And he's got his, you know, his blanket there. He's got his tricks of the trade there. You know, I think all 3 of us probably walk around with a little backpack of stuff, you know, whether it's fidget things to chew on, headphones, music to listen to, you know, all that kind of thing. So I think we basically carry around our safe places, whether they be tools or people. Again, bang on, Catherine, when you said you take 5 people to support three kids. Again, it's numbers, basic numbers. You have to think to yourself, you know, in my house, I always say, who's got eyes on? Who's got eyes on number 1? Who's got eyes on number 2? You know, so someone is always responsible for having eyes on someone and arm's reach to someone, because at the end of the day, you can't be distracted. Somebody needs to be responsible for mitigating. You can do as much research as you can, but you need the numbers. You need the numbers as well. So find ways to take people. I don't have any other family around me. This is, you know, if I can't hire a support worker, we don't leave the house, you know, that kind of thing. So this is why, again, access in the NDIS is so important to families like those. And you need to constantly advocate to get those things so you can leave the house. But without it, you know, you don't take the risk. So I think there are a lot of inaccessible places in the world. Some of them will never be accessible. A beach will never be. I'll never let my son just go and swim without me going in with him. That's never going to happen. But what I can do is just make sure I arrange for someone to look after my other son so I can go in with the one who likes to go in. But on the other degree, things you can advocate for, like, you know, fences around parks or quiet rooms and busy places, that kind of thing. I mean, there's a 2-pronged approach, and I think that's also a really important thing to do as well.
Ladies, so much great knowledge, practical advice. Prepare, advocate, but also put your oxygen mask on. I think that's really key messages that have come out from part 2 of this series. And once again, thank you so much for being vulnerable, sharing your stories. It's these candid conversations that our community need, to hear what we're going through, to hear and put things in place that are going to help them each and every day. So again, massive appreciation and thanks to all three of you for joining us. We'll be posting this on socials. Get involved, like the ladies' businesses and their personal profiles. For more information on autism content, you can visit our websites in the description box below or follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you so much for joining us, and stay safe, everyone, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you to Autism Awareness Australia for putting on these incredible webinars and blogs where we're able to contribute to these conversations and hopefully circumvent something for somebody who's on a different journey to us and they've learned from this experience. So thank you to all the work that you guys do at AAA. We can't live without you here in Australia. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure we can do a 1,000,000-part series on this, and we'll continue this conversation in other ways and platforms. So thank you once again, ladies, for joining us and sharing your experiences.
Thank you.
Thanks, ladies. Bye.